The Hog's Nigh is brought to you by TicketClub.com, your one-stop shop for live events nationwide. Whether you're looking for game, theater, or live performance tickets, don't sweat it. TicketClub.com has you covered. So make sure you're going there for all your live entertainment needs, and make sure you're clicking over to them from the banner at the top of thehogsnigh.com.
It's Just Business with Steve Thomas and John Worrell. And now, here's your host, Chris Leary.
Hello and welcome to It's Just Business, a show on the Hogstye Network where we look at the dollars and cents of the sports, industrial, entertainment complex. I am joined by my two other humans, John and Steve. How you doing today, fellas?
See, that kind of implies that there are non-humans that are occasionally on this show, and I wonder what you mean by that.
What I like about that intro most is that Chris didn't say that his name's Chris, but Chris is the one who's joined by John and Steve, for those who are wondering.
Chris. I went for what should be theoretically the most uncontroversial of introductions and still get flamed.
That's true. No, your name has religious connotations, sir.
Well, my job is to be petty, about all things and make fun of other people's failings. That's really what I'm best at.
It's good,
Well,
good to have a hobby.
It is kind of a hobby, I like
all right.
it.
Well, then maybe in 2 weeks' time when we record again, I'll steer the other way and try to find the most controversial introduction.
Nice. I'm looking forward to that one.
See, that's a good thing. Yeah, as long as you don't get us, thrown off of YouTube, I'm all for it. Or iTunes or one of those, whatever we're on.
Steve's last name isn't Bannon.
No. Thank God.
All right, so with that out of the way, let's jump into today's topics. And what's more exciting and relevant than this week's PED scandal, this time attacking the National Football League? Cue sound effect. Steve, who's in trouble this week?
It's Patrick Peterson. He's the winner. Patrick Peterson, the all-pro corner from the Arizona Cardinals. He, may be the top corner in the league. And as we often see, our heroes sometimes are flawed and not what we thought they were. Well, Patrick Peterson, kids, was busted. When I say busted, means he tested positive for both a performance-enhancing drug and a masking agent, which means that he cheated and then tried to cover up his cheating, because that's what a masking agent is. And whenever you guys see something like a player was busted with like female hormones in his system, it's not that, what that is about is those are masking agents. It's stuff that's breaking down into female hormones, but it's a masking agent, which means that they're cheating. That's why masking agents are illegal. Or not illegal, but are against the NFL policy. So Patrick Peterson got caught with both, and there was some question. I know, Chris, we talked about it off air, but also amongst the media about why he got 6 games. He got a 6-game suspension, and because the media out there apparently can't read or follow even the basics of a policy, let me lay it out. A first-time failure. This is the NFL's performance-enhancing drug policy. A first-time failure for an anabolic, meaning the actual PED itself, is 4 games. A masking agent is 2 games. If you get caught with both, an anabolic plus a masking agent, it's 4 plus 2, which is 6. And that is where Patrick Peterson's 6-game suspension comes in. Second failure is 10 games, and then the third game is banishment.
That's good. You got 4 plus 6. That's reading and math all at the same time.
Did I say that? 4 plus 2 equals 6.
No, you said 4 plus 2. I'm not the math one. You're here on the show for the reading and the math.
And you're just here for the funny quips.
I'm here, and it's an audio show. I'm here for the looks.
Anyway, and so the third failure is banishment, but you can apply for reinstatement within 24 months. And so that is the NFL's policy. That's why Patrick Peterson got 6. So really what I'm wondering here, I'm all for it personally. I think the penalties aren't strict enough. What I'm wondering is how everybody feels about this policy, about how the NFL's administering it, and whether there should even be a policy. That's what I'm wondering. Silence.
So I'll jump in there. Yeah, there should absolutely be a policy because it's this is it's an athletic contest, and it ought to be a contest between athletes. It shouldn't be a contest to see who can get hold of the best chemicals. I think the problems that are at play here is the amount of pressure that are put on athletes to be successful. That begins at a very young age. It's in your formative years, and you've got coaches and fathers and God knows who barking down. You need to be the best at what you do, and so the challenge becomes how do you be the best if other people are taking these supplements that are making them better. The only thing that you can do to try to keep up is either naturally be so superior that you don't need them, which is out of your control, or you need to play the game the same way the other guys are playing it, which is to cheat. And so the problem is that once you've gone outside of the rules, there are no guidelines for how far outside the rules you should go. So the rules are the guidelines. Once you've decided that you're not going to play by the rules, you're playing by whatever rules you come up with. And that's where things get dangerous. You end up with kids that are doing the wrong stuff, doing dangerous levels, and they don't know what a dangerous level is or isn't because you're outside of the bounds of the guidelines. And that's sort of the challenge that I have, is that you put people at risk if you don't enforce. So I'm actually, it's one of those rare occasions, Steve, where I'm with you. I feel that there needs to be stricter policy. I think it needs to be enforced better and more uniformly. And I would, we're not talking about jail time. We're not talking about a situation where, people are being thrown in prison, their livelihoods are, they're breaking rules, they're getting caught, they're paying punishments. So I'm all for it.
I think there's a couple things at play here. One, let's just be honest, and the two of you aside, most fans don't care anymore. Like, this is not some big egregious, outrageous thing. Most fans are they're just, when does my guy come back, right? What week does Patrick Peterson return to help the Arizona Cardinals win is really where the fans care. So that's interesting to me, that I don't think there's the moral outrage. I would say in all sports, but let's just stay with football. Because one, I think people assume these guys are chemicaled up, right? So I think there's that. Two, I actually think the NFL and all the sports leagues, quite frankly, out of, after 10 or 15 years in the wilderness of, how do we handle this, are actually pretty happy with their penalty structure. And I think most people think, oh, that's about fair. There's consequences. The people can come back. So I think actually the NFL, this works fine. They're going to suspend, I don't know, maybe you can find it quickly, Steve. They spend about 6 to 10 guys a year get nabbed in the policy, and that seems to have a level of fairness, and we're catching the bad guys that fans and league are actually pretty happy with.
You think there's 6 people getting caught? It means that the guys who are cheating are getting caught?
No, I said the perception is that it's fine, which lets everyone just roll along. The league can claim they're doing what they're doing, and that's fair and effective, and fans just are like, it seems like they're on it, and just hope my guy doesn't take the fall.
I don't really respect people who cheat. First of all, I don't have a lot of respect for that, and particularly in an athletic competition like this when the policy is so clear and so easy. So I don't really respect Patrick Peterson, or the other people who do this. I think it's awful. I'd be totally fine if the penalties were dramatically harsher. Ultimately it's about marketing, though. And the NFL doesn't want to just boot Patrick Peterson out of the league for a one-time failure because it's bad for the league, and it's they want to have their stars and they want to have a redemption story, and I get that. But just for me personally, I have no sympathy whatsoever for this kind of thing, particularly when it's the policy's so obvious. Okay.
But that doesn't really matter. But but you're the deep minority. I don't mean, and I think probably many people would sort of morally agree with you, right? Like, I don't think we want more cheating. I don't think that's it. But it doesn't affect the game really. No one's like kind of concerned about it. They think, oh, there's a policy. It's very black and white. You're either in it or you're out it. They catch the ones that are out of it, and everyone moves on. There's not, if you compare the public perception about performance-enhancing drugs in 2019 to 2010, it's a vastly different world.
I don't know about that. I really don't. And I don't think it's just nothing. John hit it. John, you said it well. I thought in the beginning. It's,
You're welcome, Steve.
there's a first for everything. And, it's not a fair competition. If somebody's doped up, it's not a fair competition. And ultimately what I want to see is a fair competition. Not, like you said, I think of the words you used, John, where you don't want to see the person who can find the best drugs or whatever it is you said exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way I feel about it. Maybe I'm a minority about this stuff in general. Perhaps
you usually are, but you're not in the minority on this particular podcast on this particular day. You're actually in the majority. So welcome aboard. This is what it feels like to have allies and friends.
I don't really like that though. I kind of like being the Lone Ranger. I know
you're gonna, but you're not. Here's the thing: is it a rare moment where Chris and I are in disagreement? So you're not going to be able to find a position that where you get to be alone on this one. So
I'm not even necessarily in disagreement with yes, I would prefer equity in medical science across athletes to make it the most fair competition, right? I'm not sitting here in denial of that moral imperative. I'm just saying my only point is that the perception of this is, this was a drop in the bucket story, right? The perception of that and the idea that athletes are fine-tuning themselves by whatever means necessary, which has always been the case, right? So I'm not saying, but that the public's perception and level of caring and a level of trust in the sports leagues have the right rules and regulations to manage it is a much different perception about our athletics than it used to be.
I don't disagree that the public's perception of it is flawed. I think people don't seem to care as much anymore because people have just gotten used to it, right? So they're okay. Well, another guy got busted. That's fine, And then that's where you get the league's out for my team because they didn't bust the other guys, and everybody's on it, and all of this stuff. And it's something else for people to kind of latch on to and complain about. My one of the challenges that I have with it. So you guys remember Chris Benoit, wrestler. For a long time, murders his family.
Oh well, and when you say wrestler, he was a WWE wrestler, not a real, wrestler.
Not an Olympic champion.
Right? He was a fake wrestler, not a real wrestler.
He was a fake wrestler, but the steroids were rampant. They have effects. And that guy went crazy and killed his family, which was terrible. You have other roid stories, and maybe the drugs have gotten safer. I don't think they have. I think that if they have changed, you still have those people out there experimenting, looking for the bigger, badder thing that's gonna, this is gonna get you an edge over the guys that are only taking this. So maybe it might make you a little crazy, maybe it won't. We're out of the, we're out of the realm of playing by any rules. So we're now into the experimental territory of who knows what this will do to your heart or your brain. But it'll make you faster than the next guy. The other problem that I have with it is that the number of injuries in the league has, as far as I can tell, has skyrocketed. We have more and more people losing time, and that's because guys are getting bigger and guys are getting stronger and they're hitting harder. And there is no steroid that's going to make your knee stronger, right? You're going to make your muscles stronger, going to make you bigger, make you carry more weight into that hit, but your joints were not designed to support the amount of mass that's moving at the speed that's moving. And we've got guys just falling apart left and right. And that makes the game less enjoyable as a fan. The fact that, by week 10, I don't know half the guys on the team anymore because everybody's hurt.
Yeah. And I also like to throw out there that, the drug manufacturers are always way ahead of the drug testers.
Mm-hmm.
And so these masking agents get more and more sophisticated. And if you go all the way back to the Barry Bonds case with the Balco lab in California, and what was the guy, Bill Romanowski was involved in that.
Oh, yeah.
They were way ahead of the testing for a long time, and so it's always kind of a race. But if you'd allow me to be a cynic, because if there's anything that I'm good at, it's being a cynic. And I would postulate here that it may be that the NFL really doesn't care about any of this, and what this really is just a marketing strategy, okay? I think the NFL cares about this to the extent that the public cares. And as long as they think that the public does not want to see cheating, does not want to see doped up players, that they're going to continue to test and to continue to pretend like it's a big deal to them. But I don't know if Roger Goodell and company care about any of these players. I don't know if they care about the health of it. I don't even know if they care about the integrity of the game. I think what they care about is that people continue to watch it.
And to Chris's point, they do. The people have gotten adjusted to this. Is just the way that the sport is, and they don't seem to care anymore. And the NFL will care about the players after they've been sued and are forced to do so monetarily. And until that happens, they don't give a damn about the players.
No, I mean, and listen, it's a business. It's not ma and pa kettle coming to dinner time. It is a business, and you didn't like that. That just popped out of my head.
No, I loved it. I love that it's a business and it's not ma and pa kettle coming to dinner time.
I don't know what I meant by that, but I think you got the
it
point.
Was beautiful though. It was a hell of a moment.
I mean, the point is, it's a business first, okay? And, all of these things are designed to make the game more marketable. And listen, there's a betting component to it. Sports betting is a big part of sports today. And, if these players are doped up, it affects the performance of the players, which affects the betting line, theoretically at least. And like sports like track and field, for example, if it dramatically affects sprinting. How many U.S. and international sprinters have gotten busted for PEDs and lost medals because of it? But for me, this whole thing just comes down to fairness. Players who are doped up on PEDs, it's not a level playing field, and I'd rather just see a level playing field or not see it. That's where I.
Who cares about fairness?
Who's that?
Ma and Pa Kettle.
They do.
And little baby Kettle coming in from the field because it's supper time. And Ma's got pies on the stove.
As long as it's their definition of fairness. I think Steve, you're actually pretty much agreeing with me in terms of the fact that the NFL feels like they've got it. It's sort of the Goldilocks solution, right? It's not like throw them out. It's not Katie bar the door. They think that they have a solution that seems fair to a majority of fans and lets everyone move on. The thing I'd like to see in this issue, which I think, to your point around John, around the wrestler killing his family and the kind of Lyle Alzado, kind of view of steroids, the reality is that the medical science is way beyond that. And I do think these leagues should probably have, they never will, so let me just preface it that. But, the majority of these drugs now are less about actually performance enhancement. They're about healing. They're about how do you get back on the field or the court or the ice or whatever faster. So a lot of these substances are actually speeding up the healing process of injuries. And I do think eventually they're going to have to, they're not up with the science, and some of the science probably is less bad than it's being grouped in. And so and at some point, we have to just admit we want our athletes back on the field. We want them fine-tuned like a car. And at some point, we're going to have to figure out, what are the agents that help that happen and start to separate those out. I do think they are completely dumb about the sophistication of the science, which actually plays into your point about the masking agents. But they are light years behind the medical science on all of these things.
Well, and let's dive into a little bit about what PEDs are. None of us are doctors, obviously, but, frankly, I'm a lot smarter than most people, and I'm smarter than you out there, and, I'm arrogant enough to believe that. Whether or not that's actually true.
That's what smart means.
No, but seriously, I mean, what a lot of PEDs are, when you said healing, what they do, when you're bodybuilding, what your muscles are literally doing is tearing at a microscopic level and then healing, and then the healing part is building muscle mass, okay? And so it's really what these masking agents are doing is allowing your body to heal faster, which allows you to work out more. So if you lift weights and the muscles tear and then the muscles heal at a faster, greater rate, then you could do it more. And that's really fundamentally what steroids are, okay? And so that's why And that's where the unfairness comes into it. So, listen, Chris, you and I don't agree on a lot of these things like that, but I do sort of agree with you in that I think the NFL sort of has it figured out, like you said. Personally, I would be fine if, Patrick Peterson got kicked once, ban him. I'm totally fine with that. Kick him out of the league. But that's just not reality, and that's just not what fans want to see. I do think that a lot of fans out there don't care whatsoever. I do think there's a contingent of fans out there that say, I don't care what they take. Let them take all the PEDs they want. If they want to ruin their body, it's up to them. I just want to see them play. I think there's a significant number of fans that do believe that.
I think there's also, it's odd, this is a little bit odd, but that's where I come from sometimes. I think that there may be a generational factor in fan opinion on this. And so part of that reason, the reason why I say that is that when I was young, I had, which just to let you guys know, I was young back when sort of it was a league of Marinos and John Riggins and these guys, right? Joe Montana and so forth. Those are the guys that are going to stick in my mind as the people that I care about, that are, to me, ever since, in the last 15 years or whatever, the NFL has just been a revolving door of names. So they come and they go. Some guys get, popular, and other guys. I don't care as much anymore about the individuals as I did when I was young. And so as I get older, I care less about the individual athletes. I care more about the sport and the game and the teams. And so as an older person than I used to be, which I think applies to all of us, I'm no doctor. As an older person than I used to be, I lean more toward the, hey, you know what, one and done, kick him out. Because I don't give a damn about Patrick Peterson, right? I still care about Darryl Green. And those were my heroes. I don't care nearly as much about today's individual athlete. So I'm more inclined to say, you know what, the integrity of the sport means more to me than the individual athlete. Punish the athlete, keep the sport pure, because the sport's what I care about now. I may have had a different opinion 20 years ago.
Yeah, I've always been the one to follow the jersey and not the player too. Mm-hmm. I don't really care about Patrick Peterson, and I'm a Redskin fan, as all three of us are on this show, and it matters less to me who's on the team, and matters more to me the jersey they're wearing. So, and if the Redskins lost a player, I'll be fine. I'll keep watching.
That could have something to do with the fact that for the last 25 years we haven't had anyone to root for, so.
Well, that
might be less about our age and more about our team.
Listen, I'm a Laker fan too. The Lakers have won a whole bunch of championships in my lifetime, and it's always just more about the team. For me, so I don't really care. But I think generationally, the younger generation today certainly cares a lot about the players. Some of these fans out there will follow their favorite player from team to team.
Sure, but when I was a kid, I remember, my grandparents would they didn't care about the players either. They, because their heroes were, Sam Huff, Sonny Jurgensen and Norm Snead. These guys, they didn't give a damn about Art Monk. He was just another guy in and out the door.
Yeah, I actually
go ahead.
I'm sort of player first, but I'm probably not that much different than you on some of those things. Not enough to disagree. The other thing about young people, too, is just that this was shocking to us, right? Like, in our formative years. Like, PEDs, steroids, right? Like, this was a big scene. This is just sort of the rules of the game. Now, I think a lot of people still would hope that cheaters get caught, right? But it's not, there's nothing shocking about this. This is the norm of sports. Some guys cheat, and there's mechanisms to catch them, hopefully. So there's not that sort of, we're not doing congressional hearings about this anymore, right? Like, so some of it is if you're a 30-year-old sports fan, this is as common as a rain delay or whatever, in terms of your sports landscape. It's not the shock value of it that we kind of like were embroiled in is just not there. I mean, I've said this on the show before. It's my favorite example, but there was no bigger steroid monster than A-Rod. Well, I've seen him on 5 red carpets. He's on J-Lo's arm, and he co-hosts the flagship Major League Baseball show. So, apparently it doesn't have a long-term effect on your career.
Yet,
Well,
yet Pete
I mean-
Rose.
Well, look, I mean, A-Rod happens to be an outstanding analyst. You know, I mean, I'm willing to give him a shot as an analyst for sure. He's really good at that, and that doesn't have anything to do with his PED use. As a player, yeah, I think they should have kicked him out. You know, I'm fine with that, but I'm willing to give him a shot as an analyst. Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me what part of J-Lo A-Rod is on at the moment.
My point is that these people are not pariahs, right? This is not damaging.
I agree. An interesting twist, just as someone who was and we'll get into video games, I believe, later in the show, but as somebody who's a video game fan and a fan of esports leagues, one thing that is interesting is that generation, which is largely in the 50 to 25 age bracket, has zero tolerance for people cheating in video games. And they turn violently against if they find out that somebody is using
cheat
something
code or whatever.
Well, you know, there are programs that you can use
game?
you can download things that help you auto aim. It'll recognize targets and help your aim to hit those targets. You can get things that will change the frame rate. You speed up your internal computer clock, and you'll see things before other people do. There are things you can do to minimize your hitbox, or anything that they can find that will, because this is all computer code, right? So
but let's not get away from the issue, because
no, I'm just saying that generationally they have zero tolerance for cheating in that arena, but in the traditional sports leagues, to Chris's point, has become so normalized that it doesn't seem to bother people.
Well, yeah, but no, what I was getting at, I wasn't trying to cut you off, John. My point is that the video games they're participating in, and so they're mad. Yeah, I think what you're saying is that they're mad if the people they're playing are cheating, whereas in just they're watching the NFL, they're not personally invested in it. Except
so
as a fan.
yes and no, but there are so the esports leagues are not necessarily audience participation leagues, right? You have professional athletes that are on professional.
Well,
teams
they're not athletes.
Well, they have that's the term that is used.
They're
you don't
professional
have to agree with
entertainers.
it. I'm just using industry terminology, which I know you don't like.
The industry's wrong. They're not
Yes,
athletes.
okay.
Period. Dot. The end.
Yes.
They're not.
All right. The point is, you have people who are playing the games, and you have an audience of people who are watching the games, who are not in that league, who are not competing against those people. They're fans of teams. They're fans of the sport. They're fans of individuals.
It's not a sport, but go ahead.
And there's no tolerance for cheating. People will physically thrown out and they're shit wrecked for it. It's cool.
Okay, well, yeah, okay. So, fair. You're saying the fans of esports, have no tolerance. That's interesting.
It is interesting. They don't like cheating there, but to Chris's point, they don't seem to mind it.
Somehow,
in
it's
baseball.
not cheating. In baseball,
Right?
It sounds perfect. You can cheat and you don't get back knee or your testicles swell.
Well, maybe you don't.
All right. Well, I'm gonna pull a host audible here, and because we sort of naturally shifted into the grand esports debate, we're gonna go into our next topic, which wasn't necessarily going to be this order, but let's jump into our video game esports. Is it sports? All that fun stuff, which I find highly entertaining.
Woohoo! Finally.
And talk a little bit about some new controversy around an NCAA college football game.
Yeah. Now, this is John's area, so let me introduce it and turn the mic over to you. Yeah. So there's an EA Sports video game, which John knows all about, that was NCAA football. And that went away years ago. And part of the reason is that they were basically stealing the likeness of these players in some view, in some people's, in some interpretation, and using the likeness of the players without compensation. In reality, I'm not sure that's really the case from a legal perspective, but that's a big reason why the game went away. Just this past week, there has been talk about this game being resurrected. I believe there's an NCAA council. I think the AD at Ohio State has formed like a committee to discuss this. And so the chatter is maybe that game comes back. And then the question becomes, how do you do it from a legal perspective and use their likeness and whatnot? And should they be paid? Should they not be paid, etc.? So John, as we know, worked at EA Sports.
Hello.
So, John, talk about this.
It's in the game.
It's in EA Sports. It's in the game. Yes. So there was a game, NCAA football. The last one that was put out in 2013, which those of you who are fans of EA Sports know that would have been NCAA 14 because we were always off by a year, very similar to the auto manufacturing industry. NCAA was a very popular game for a number of reasons. One was the popularity of NCAA football in general. And another reason why it was a very popular game was because before new technology or new game modes or new interesting features in the game got into Madden, they would always show up in NCAA the year before, which is sort of where it was a proving ground. So the NCAA title always had the bleeding edge technology, the newest physics. All of that stuff was always in NCAA. So the true fans of the sport, and I did call it a sport because I have the mic. I'm not allowed to be interrupted during this segment because I turned the mic right over to me.
It's not a sport.
Giant mistake on Steve's part. So the fans of the game understood that NCAA was the one to play if you were only going to pick one. The challenges around NCAA is that very similar to trying to produce FIFA, you have an enormous number of license deals that you have to do. With the NFL, it's fairly simple. It's a big franchise thing. You do a deal with the NFL and the NFLPA, and you've got all the jerseys, all the likenesses, all the names, everything. With NCAA, you've got to deal with individual conferences, often individual schools. And then there's the challenge, which is a larger challenge around collegiate and amateur athletics, which is that the players are not getting any of this, which became a problem, and I think a legitimate one. As I recall, and I did work for Electronic Arts. I don't represent them. I'm not a lawyer.
Are you subject to a confidentiality agreement?
I don't believe that I am. Okay. I also don't believe that I'm going to say anything that hasn't already been put out in the press.
Do you know how much John Madden makes every year off the Madden video game?
I'm not sure if we're allowed to use the word schlode here, but that's there's several of those, I think, is how many he makes. The challenge is that the NCAA, as far as I'm concerned, wants to find absolutely no permeability in their position that college athletes should not be paid a penny for anything, because once that door opens anywhere, it becomes very hard to shut, and the crack in that door is just going to get wider and wider because they're making astronomical amounts of money off of what are essentially unpaid employees, and that's a position that people can argue one way or the other, but it cannot be argued that there's a lot of money being pulled in and that the players aren't getting any of it. That's just the case. So the challenge is in the video game, while the games are not using the names of these people, they are using very detailed likenesses of these people. And it's extremely clear that these are the athletes, because if you don't do that, it loses value in the eyes of the player, right? They want to play as that team with those players, and they want it to be just as realistic as Madden is.
Just the names literally aren't on the back of the jersey, but everybody knows it's like Bryce Love of Stanford or whatever.
Right, and you can typically download roster packs that fans have put together that will correct the names to be the names of the real people. The problem, I believe, came up legally when Ed O'Bannon, who was a basketball player, discovered that he had been, I believe, included in a historical team in an NCAA basketball game, and it had enough. At that point, he wasn't still a collegiate player, but he recognized, hey, I'm not even in college anymore. They're continuing to make money off of my likeness, and I'm not seeing any of this, and this is just wrong. So lawsuit was filed. I believe it was settled. Electronic Arts was $20 million.
I don't know the number. I know that lawsuit was settled.
Yeah, it was settled, and then so it won't necessarily be brought up again. So the talk these days is how do we it was a really good game, and so the market is demanding a product to fill that gap, because that's what markets do.
Well, you know what's interesting about what the committee that, the Ohio State was talking about is they made it abundantly clear right from the get-go that what was not an option was universities paying the players.
Was paying the players. Sure.
Yeah.
There's no way that they're going to consider that as an option. But, but I just can't help but feel that, it's very hard to say that athletics is the only industry in which it makes sense to have essentially an unpaid internship program where just billions of dollars are being generated off
John,
these kids.
why can't the same thing just be done again as what was done before? Why can't you have the NCAA sign up a license agreement, the Big 12 sign up a license agreement, University of Oklahoma sign up a license agreement where they can use their University of Oklahoma marks, and then just let EA Sports create, like Myler Curry, the quarterback, and go at it like that? Why can't they just do the same thing they had before? Because that's basically what it was before, right?
I think that the challenge now is that now that there's been some precedence of liability, and I know that the case never was closed, but once there's a settlement and they have an idea that there's probably a case.
Yeah.
Now you have to get. It becomes much harder to get all of the teams and all of the conferences to agree when suddenly liability is a word being thrown around.
Okay. So what's the answer here then?
My answer is I think that you need to find a way to replicate the collegiate athletics environment inside a pro game. But there's two ways you can go about this. You can create a game that is in a pretend universe, which honestly is a viable concept now that wasn't before. You didn't have servers weren't capable of letting people create an MMO style world where you had a lot of people.
Well, what's
enough
MMO?
people,
what does that mean?
Massively multiplayer online game. So the idea being that all of the people who are playing the game are essentially generating their own collegiate environment. You have enough people playing that you're populating the league with real.
Well, like for example, I know
players,
the basketball game. Like the boys here have got this in EA Sports basketball, whatever it's called, 2K, and I think you can create a player from scratch in that game.
And that's what I'm talking about.
If your name is John Smith, you can name it John Smith, and that's your guy, and you can
get
drafted, and that's what you're talking about.
You can
right?
name yourself 420 every day. Whatever it is you want to name yourself. Oh, and they will. So one alternative is you do that. You let people create their own players. They're in there experiencing, the game as an individual rather than. So, but the problem there is that you lose the, I love Alabama. I want to be on Alabama. I don't have Alabama. So it's not as big a hit. The other alternative, which I think is ultimately the way that things are going to have to go, is at some point the NCAA is going to need to figure out some way to compensate the players for the money that they're generating. And once that gets figured out, all of these things get solved. Right?
I mean, here's the problem, though, John. It's that, okay, so you can have an NCAA football game. There's probably a market for NCAA basketball game, I would assume, also,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah. But there's not a market for the NCAA women's volleyball. Right. EA Sports is not going to make a swim team game.
Right.
And so what you're going to be faced with is the same thing I've been preaching for years on this show, which is you're going to have male football and basketball players paid.
But who pays the javelin thrower? Right.
Nobody pays the javelin thrower. That's
right.
the problem. And so then you come into the same issue, which is a Title IX issue, if you have the universities paying. Because really and truly, if university could license its marks out, right? And then they could go to the players, forget the NCAA rules for a minute. They could go to the players, have the players sign a licensing agreement, in exchange for consideration. And you could do it like that in absence of the NCAA rules prohibiting this, and in absence of Title IX prohibiting male sports being paid more than female sports. And so it's the same problems that we face with all of these things.
Has there been a discussion around the idea of it being that the sort of the salary pool, if you will, is a percentage of revenue generated regardless of gender?
I mean, that's not really contemplated by Title IX. I mean, the point of Title IX is to say universities can't spend more money on male sports than female sports, and universities can't give more scholarships, to male sports and female sports. And so if you kind of parlay that out and say, okay, the University of Oklahoma, to use my original example, is going to pay, Kyler Murray some amount of money, a huge, enormous amount of money, but yet the women's swim team isn't getting any of this money. Right. It's the same problem. Now, I mean, you could fix that like this. EA Sports pays this money, because there's a market value on Kyler Murray's likeness and using this video game, whatever the number is. Right. And so instead of the money coming from the university, it just comes from EA Sports. And, then the university, I think you could stay clear of Title IX. But then the problem is you have the NCAA prohibition against players working during the season.
So, but that's an interesting prohibition to me, right? Like, I don't think there's any prohibition against college kids getting a job waiting tables or stripping or whatever it is college kids do these days. Yet,
it's funny how you went from waiting tables to stripping.
It's basically the same thing if you go to the right places. Most of those are in Florida, which brings us back to another show. I think that the idea that these are athletes, they're also kids, they should be eligible to find gainful employment.
Well, but the problem is this, the problem, and this has happened to players. You have your wealthy booster sponsor who has a business, and then you sign up the quarterback of, I'll make a team up. Pick your university because I don't want to slander
Tennessee.
them. Okay, Tennessee, and then you pick, the quarterback at the University of Tennessee who has a phony job, who's not really working and is making a ton of money, and there's fundamental unfairness there, and there may be illegal violations there too.
Steve just totally slandered the University of Tennessee. Did you guys all hear that?
Yeah, sue us.
He chose Tennessee.
There's something called judgment-proof defendants out there.
Uh-oh.
I mean, I think
Chris. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris.
We're not going to relitigate this, but I think, and Steve is 1,000% correct as the rules are now. I think what this represents is another giant sum of money lining up, and so at what point does the dam burst and everything has to be scrambled and refigured out? And so something like this is just another giant pile of cash on the kind of scales towards a tipping point, and it's sort of that's probably what we're heading towards. And who knows when it'll be, but it'll mean a restructuring of the entire system, because as complex systems are, there's all kinds of downstream implications. But when you see these bags of money start to line up, the scales start to wobble.
That's right. It's, when you have a large pile of unclaimed cash, there's a revenue stream that is not being tapped, and people are willing to pay money into that revenue stream. Somebody's going to figure it out, and I think that I don't know how it's going to get done. I would think that at some point you have to set up some sort of a university affiliated minor league system, rather than having it be part of the university. I think that you have to actually say, this is a developmental league. We will base the teams on the universities so that the universities don't lose that rah-rah, I love my university and I'm going to, continue to pay alumni dues or whatever into it. But it can't be, it's so far away from part of the educational system already that, somebody just has to pull the trigger on it.
Well, I hear you. And that's a whole nother discussion, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, and we're not going to solve it. The three of us are probably not going to solve it. I feel confident in saying that.
But call us if you think we should. Then we're ready. We're ready.
We could do it if given the opportunity.
That's right.
All right. So our third and final story here, as we move on, has something to do with Gum Sports. So get your Google machines out. But what's really interesting is this report starts to look at just the amount of return on investment sponsors get through, not just TV is obviously a big driver, but not exclusively TV. It's all the ways in which, companies who can, sponsor and advertise via sports and their channels are making a huge return on investment 5 times, which if you're in any way involved with business or even family or personal finance, you would jump on anything that gives you a 5-time return on investment. So
I can contact Gum Gum and sponsor my wife and get 5 times my money back.
Exactly. There you go.
I like this.
Still might not be the return.
My wife does not listen to the show, for the record. I'm safe in saying that.
And they even claim that there's whole swaths of sort of like dubiously legal or uncounted sponsorship and revenue that their modeling isn't even capturing yet. So 5 times the return on investment is probably conservative.
Yeah, and by the way, what we're talking about here is there's an article by Front Office Sports. It's called "Examining the Future of Sports Sponsorships." That was published on May 14th, 2019. So that's what we're talking about here. And the Gum Gum Sports, report is referenced in here, and that's what the article is about. What caught my eye about this article is they're talking about artificial intelligence being a part of sports marketing, and I just can't even begin to imagine really what that's.
Of course, it is
really what they
well,
mean.
that's what drives. It's the same technology that drives political campaigns with micro targeting to your niche market.
So, what we're talking about is the introduction of big data into sports marketing, and it's something that's happening. I work in video games. We do the exact same thing in video games. We're tracking people's behavior. Everybody knows what everybody's doing online. If you think that your online activity is not known to massive corporations, you're flat wrong. Yes, but I proxy. Yes, but you're not the only one who knows that you proxy. These things are being tracked. You are getting advertising that is targeted directly to you based on your interests, based on your spending behaviors, based on your income, based on when you tend to buy things. All of these things are happening, and obviously it's going to get into sports as well. There isn't any reason why it wouldn't.
On behalf of sane people everywhere, I like to say I hate that.
Yep.
It very much bothers me.
It's just business, my friend.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you're right, ultimately. And so really what we're talking about here, then, you're saying, is that we are about to get advertising in sports being driven by this by
AI.
AI. Well, by
it's algorithm
data claimed by data driven by and collected by computer algorithms.
Yeah, it's already happening. I think what you're starting to see now with Gum Gum is that the traditional marketing arms have kind of embraced this idea, and they've been moving toward it steadily over time. But I think what you're starting to see now is the emergence of marketing brands that position themselves as this is what we really do well. We're not mired in traditional media. We're not structuring our agreements and contracts based on outdated methodologies that are no longer super relevant. We're targeting things differently. We are the future. This is the way we do things. This is why you want your team or your athlete to sign with us, because we can generate more revenue than the other guys can, because this is what we do well.
So
Go ahead, Chris.
I'm concerned. I mean, I have a lot of the same. I see. I'm sort of see the positivity and the negativity about this. I am also concerned about the unquenchable thirst for big data, et cetera, et cetera. But I'll take it, and we kind of keep it in the sports realm. There is a positive aspect to this in terms of that the long tail created by this much data and the understanding of the consumer does mean that niche sports actually probably have better paths to solvency, to relevancy, to sustainability. Because if you know exactly who the market is and how to get that return, then and that appeals to a certain company or marketer or whatever, then they'll go hard on that niche thing and actually get a sustainable business model for something that's never going to be the NFL, right? It's never going to be mass. You're never going to get, Budweiser and Toyota commercials that are going to pay out the nose. But you can open up much more viable revenue streams for these sports because they know exactly who the customer is and how to market to them, and will pay, a better premium to reach them, whether it's NASCAR or NHL or
That's right.
And those are even probably bigger than
you're using big examples. So, but I think
Right.
when you talk about niche stuff, here, so an
There's
example,
esports.
there's esport, and Gum Gum's in esports, but the Ultimate Frisbee has a league, has a professional Ultimate Frisbee league, which I watched for a little while when I was up in Canada, because where else would there be professional Ultimate Frisbee league? But Ultimate Frisbee, not a huge market, they're not going to be filling any 90,000 seat stadiums. It's small, but the people who follow Ultimate Frisbee are from wealthy families, right? You've got white hippie kids, sons of yuppies or whatever, running around playing
All the
Frisbee
E's.
because they don't have to work or whatever, right? It's, smoke dope on Tuesday, Ultimate Frisbee on Wednesday, go check the trust fund stats on Thursday. and this is who these people are.
You can do
There's
all that in
not a
one
lot
day.
of Ultimate Frisbee fans, but if you know where they are, you know how they spend, you know why they spend, and you know that they have the money to spend, you can make that a viable league if you target
Listen,
it
I
correctly.
mean, you're right. You're exactly right. In this article talks about how the quote is somewhere between 40 and 60% of leagues, every league's inventory is missing a significant portion of its overall value. Am I the only one who just gets sick and tired of it? I get
No,
sick and tired
it's
of being
terrible.
drowned by advertising everywhere you look. I just get tired of it, and I mean, it's the way the world works, and it's all about the money. I realize that, but just personally, I just get sick and tired of seeing it.
What's our...
I think everyone agrees
Have
with
we
that.
plugged our Twitter handle yet?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
We're part of the
Touche, my friend.
But at the same time, one thing they do find is people's appetite or tolerance, or however you want to frame it, for marketing messages increases when the relevancy to them increases, right? Like if you keep servicing me pantyhose, then my rate of frustration
And
and
he's going to
annoyance
buy, my friend.
is going to get higher. Something is appropriate for all occasions. But if I'm getting stuff that if I'm getting stuff that's relevant to me, there's maybe a baseline annoying, but you're going to annoy people much less because it and then it becomes personalized. Which is in fact true, but we're humanizing it too much. The algorithm does in fact know me, and I'm less annoyed because these are things I actually am interested and care about.
I do personally everything I can to turn these algorithms off, but I think there's probably no way to really turn it off at this point. I think like the horse is out of the barn.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to online data collection, tracking, and all that stuff. I do everything I possibly can to avoid it, but I suspect that Facebook and Google and all these other and by the way, the only ads you should be paying attention to, and the ads that are really good, the ones on the Hogsty website.
Those are,
those
arguably
are
the best stats I think on the internet that I've seen for sure.
Yeah, but all the rest of them, maybe ignore those. But the ones on the Hogside website, definitely you should click through.
Those are really good. I think,
Yeah.
Steve, I agree. I don't think that anybody likes the fact that their data is being collected and
I
aggregated.
don't think the public really knows.
Well, they've heard. It's not. I think it's a little bit of a generational thing. I think the people who have grown up this way, and it's been this way long enough now that you have adults who have just always lived in this world. I think that they're used to it. I think that they've accepted it. They don't really have a problem with it because that's just kind of what they've grown up in. But when you don't fight it and you embrace it and you let them collect the data on what's interesting, then it actually can be, to Chris's point, not terrible. Like if you're getting news about, let's say, Steve, that what you care about mostly are, I'm going to say, the Lakers and fences and personal defense items. Anything to keep your home off the market, right? So you don't want anybody being able to see your house on Google Maps. Okay. So let's say that there's, you would get advertising for a device that you could put in your lawn that would block your home from being seen by satellite images.
I would I would sign up for that device.
You would sign up for that in a heartbeat. But you wouldn't know about it if they weren't collecting your data and knew to push it.
I'll find it on my own. I'm smart enough to figure it out on my own.
I'm sure that you will. The
ratio algebra of the digital age.
Let's say that I cared about hiking up mountains, which I don't. I'm not a. I'm a big fan of letting the mountains be themselves and not ruining it with. But if I was, then it becomes, the advertising is how I know that there's a new technology in boots.
Listen, I mean, I get it, okay? I get it. I don't care. I don't care.
Sure.
I'll do with it, I'll do without it. I'm far more interested in not having these companies collect my data and keep it in a massive database. I don't care if I don't find the product. But to apply this to sports, though, and maybe we can finish that, because this is a whole nother discussion. We could spend an hour on this. We could spend weeks, days on this. So how does this apply to sports teams? Pick, I don't know. I mean, the St. Louis Cardinals. Okay. And so how does this artificial intelligence stuff apply to the St. Louis Cardinals in a way that's not already being done? Like their website has advertising through Google Ads or whoever it is. I mean, and they're collecting all this data. But where are we going with this in terms of sports teams?
Well, I can tell you one example. So St. Louis Cardinals, have, one of those kind of national teams to some degree, right? They're not, like, their fan base is not constrained to just St. Louis. They're kind of a classic franchise. A lot of people are from there and move on. They have fans everywhere. So if the sports team is better able to market and understand their kind of quote unquote out of market fan base and reach them and sort of be able to treat them and market them like they lived in downtown St. Louis, if anyone still does in fact live in downtown St. Louis, then
God help you if you do.
Then that's a highly valuable thing, right? It takes it makes them not locked into their region. So to be able to and in today's transient society, people move and whatnot, like to be able to track and know your fan base regardless of where they are is super powerful.
Okay, I mean, I get it. It involves collecting tons of data and violating people's privacy and, all the rest of it. And, I hate it. Hate it.
It's nice.
Except when it comes to, again, it's worthwhile when applied to thehogsty.com, but in everywhere else in life, I hate it.
Well, you just named the core conundrum of this whole issue.
Yeah, true.
Even for people who are not out of market. So if if you're a Cardinals fan, you live in St. Louis, it's helpful. This is not here to help the fans, right? This is here to help the business, and the way that it helps the business is I'm not going to spend money advertising on a site where the people who go to that site aren't in the demographic that tend to buy my product. So if I'm the Cardinals and I'm trying to sell jerseys, right, or I'm trying to sell tickets, or I'm trying to let people know about a fan event, I need to go to a place to advertise where I'm going to get a good return on that investment. I can't just hope. Maybe I'll advertise on Facebook. I have to spend money to advertise on Facebook, but I can know if the Facebook fans, and there's you can target different parts of Facebook. You can target different parts of the internet. So I'm going to try to get the best return on my advertising investment by putting the right ads in the places where people are most likely to act on them.
And none of this is new. I mean, this is marketing 101 conceptually. Know your audience, collect as much data as you can on your audience. It's just that the technology and internet lets it be one-click scalable. But whether it was direct mail, whether it was buy a magazine subscription for 10 cents, whether it was, being on
Columbia Records.
Yeah, Columbia Records. Like there's all, those things always gave some kind of pseudo value or something someone wants, but always the goal was data mining. It just we go from analog digital and you hit global implication scale. But it's none of this is the theories and the quest for that knowledge about your consumer is not the digital age didn't create that.
I wonder if the technology is going to get to the point someday where the physical advertisements on jerseys are going to be virtual
Oh yeah, but electric
You
threads.
know, and
Absolutely.
Very close.
and driven, like what you see on your television is going to be a data-driven virtual ad on the Cardinals pitcher jersey that only you see, that's driven by the marketing data that companies have.
That's years away, not decades.
Yeah, no, that's not very far at all. I mean, we were already doing that on baseball walls and fields and courts.
Yeah. Well, so in other words, you know, like John's going to see the Pornhub ad on the baseball jersey. I'm going to see the Smith & Wesson ad, you know, and Chris is going to see, you know, some hippie, you know, drug ad.
You know how when you look at the sun for too long, you see sort of a spot wherever you look? That's the Pornhub logo for me. I
did
see
you
it
guys
everywhere.
A new color of adult gummies. I'm in.
Did you see, this is off topic, maybe we can end with a fun thing. Lamar Odom has been in the news this week, and Lamar Odom is returning to basketball in the Big Three, okay? And so he's been he got drafted into the Big Three, but he's writing a book, and so he's doing press about this book, and he claims to be a sex addict. He claims to have slept with 2,000 women, okay, which is a lot.
Wilt
But
Chamberlin
he also
level.
Yeah, he also
Yeah.
claims that he watched, in his words, every porn movie on the internet. Like, he ran out of
Impressive.
porn
That
on
is
the internet to watch.
statistically
Yeah,
impossible.
maybe he did nothing but sit around and watch porn all day
Here's my
until
question.
basketball practice.
If
came
he
up.
has watched every porn on the internet, how is his arm capable of shooting basketballs?
It's not. He got thrown out of the league.
Oh, well, see, there you go. If you've got one massive shoulder and the other one, and you're lopsided as a result of having watched every adult. All right, that's it.
What's his memoir called? When Khloe Kardashian's not enough?
There you go. You know, we'll insert the rim shot. You know, there.
We might have found our show title. All right. Well,
Insert the rim shot.
I think. Well, yeah.
That's all. We're gonna get listed on a whole other site if we use that title.
Yeah.
Here we go.
All right, so we've devolved into both a combination of sophomoric humor and a mediocre Black Mirror episode. So maybe that brings us to the close of this bi-weekly edition of It's Just Business. You can please continue to follow us and interact with us on Just Business Pod on Twitter. I'm gonna run some. We're gonna jump into the poll game, and we're gonna follow up on a theme from 2 weeks ago's show, but really a evergreen theme on the show, which is bad sports ownership. So be looking for those. We're gonna roll those out between this week and next week, and talk in next show and talk about the results in the next show. And so follow me on Chris Larry 33 if you'd like, and that's my bit, gentlemen.
Yeah, you know, first of all, we are collecting your data on the Hogsty, and we are trying to market
Vote
it
in those
directly
polls,
to
people.
Every time you click on a poll, we are, you know, inserting a camera program into your computer, and we are watching you, you know, at Hogsty headquarters in Ashburn, Virginia. No, I mean, I'm not on Twitter and I'm not on Facebook or anything like that because I'm an anachronism, but you can find me at the Hogsty Twitter handle most of the time.
And you can find me at John_Whirl on Twitter. And I will probably get back to you at least
Maybe.
within weeks.
So, John, give them your Twitch account where you can probably find you easier.
Sure. It's Lamar_Odom's shoulder at Twitch.
He's got a right shoulder that's just twice as big as his left shoulder. That's what you're saying.
That's
All right.
what I'm saying. I'm saying that as far as anachronisms go, he's the most interesting.
John, I was horrified by the 2 days ago. I turned the TV on. I come home. It's on ESPN, and there's this freaking video game programming on. It's like, what the hell is this?
Was it
And
Overwatch League?
Yes, it was. And my eyeballs burned out of my head for the 5 seconds it took me to reach the channel clicker and turn it off.
Yeah, I want to apologize once again, Steve, for being right, and letting you know that the reality is what it is. I know that you'd like it to be what you'd like it to be, and I feel you. I feel you, buddy. It's hard.
Anyway.
Well, I think as Derrida once said, we all live in our own realities of our own making, or something along those lines. Postmodernism for the win. We will see you in 2 weeks.